Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Puck Chat on Beyond the Box Score, WMCB The Fuse. I am Connor, alongside with my roommate Kyle Powell. And special guest tonight, we got Paul Barker in the studio with us. He's going to touch on a little bit of Buffalo Sabres hockey later on in the show. But with that, we're going to get right to the headlines. Last night, Patrick Marleau scored his 500th career goal, and you said he was, the 40th and 45th man to do it in the National Hockey League. And Kyle's got a couple of quick stats he's going to share on Patty Marleau and his historic night last night.
Yeah, 500 goals, 500 home runs, stuff like that really sticks out in terms of sports milestones, and this was nothing short of spectacular last night for Marleau, who just a week and a half ago went out and scored 4 goals in a period to even get ahead of the pace for 500 goals. He scored 9 minutes and 30 seconds into the first period last night in Vancouver. Yes, as we mentioned, he was the 45th player in NHL history to score 500 goals. He's the second player to reach the milestone this year in 2016-17. Blackhawks forward Marian Hossa did it back in mid-October against my Flyers. Patrick Marleau is now the 5th active scorer as well with 500, joining Jágr's 758, Jerome McGinley's 617. Again, will be a topic of discussion later on today as well, as the deadline inches closer and closer. Ovechkin netted his 550th just about a night or two ago. And again, Hossa is now up to 518. Marleau is also the 3rd active scorer with 500 goals with one franchise. He joins Ovechkin with the Capitals and O'Ginla at the beginning of his career with the Flames, where he really made a name for himself back in the early 2000s. Marleau is now tied for 8th in NHL history as well in game-winning goals, as he's up to 97. He's now tied with Jerome McGinley and Guy Lafleur, who made a prestigious career back in the 70s and 90s with Montreal, briefly with New York, and the Quebec Nordiques.
Throwback. Love it.
Disclaimer, Jaromir Jágr shockingly leads that stat as well. 134 of his nearly 760 goals have won games. Ho-hum. Patrick Marleau now also has at least one game-winning goal versus all 29 other franchises, per Elias Sports Bureau. He shares that title with Brendan Shanahan and Matt Sundin, as they are now the only 3 players to ever score against all other franchises besides the one they haven't played for. He completed that list of game-winning goals just before the new year against the Flyers. I'm just beating him up
you're really
beating him up right now.
You're killing him right now.
What are we, 3 minutes into the show? And to finish up, this prestigious talk of Marleau and looking back at his career, among 400 career goal scorers in the NHL, Patrick Marleau has the 2nd highest percentage of his total goals being of the game-winning variety. 19.6 of his now 500 goals have won games. He is percentage points behind the leader, Patrick Elias, who was first with 19.607. So, do you think Marleau's career is kind of going under the radar? Especially on the West Coast. San Jose, not a huge hockey town. They've been great recently. But especially since, Joe Thornton got to town and Pavelski and Brent Burns, we've touched on him many times. It's almost like they have 4 wingers out there when he's playing defense and anchoring the back end of that blue line. Do you think that this was a quiet 500 goals in Marleau's career? Do you think he's kind of flown his way to a very nice career that most people may not know about?
I would say he's going under the radar a little bit right now. He's kind of being a little bit shadowed, like you said, by Pavelski, Thornton, Brent Burns. But he has had a very prestigious career. But he's older, so yeah, I think it may have went a little bit under the radar. With us just hearing about it and being like, wow, Marleau 500. But he's still a very effective force in that San Jose team, and he's one of the pieces was why they're so successful. Maintaining that top spot in their division. But they just got a big solid team. I wouldn't really say that he's shadowed too much because he is definitely a key part of that team. But it's good to see him go out there and get that milestone 500.
Absolutely. So which one do you want to touch on next?
I'd like to talk about the St. Louis Blues real quick. Yeah,
they've been a topic of discussion.
Before we get into the injury talk that we was talking about in the headlines. But
this is a better reason, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. But Ken Hitchcock, if you haven't heard already, yesterday he was fired as the Blues head coach. Granted, he was going to retire at the end of the year, but Ken Hitchcock is the Blues. He had 6 seasons. Very, very good with the St. Louis Blues. His record was 248, 124, and 41. Like we said, in only 6 seasons. But right now, I couldn't really decide if this is a good move or a bad move for him. Bringing in Matt however you say his name. St. Louis is fourth in the division right now with 53 points. They're only 2 points out of a wild card. But like we said, it was his last season regardless, so I don't know if they should have let him stick around for maybe the end of the year, let him ride in the sunset, hopefully making the playoffs, having a good run in the playoffs. I mean, they have a solid team. Not as good as last year, though. I mean, goaltending has definitely been an issue this year with Jake Allen, like how we mentioned in previous shows, falling off of his game. Kyle blames it on him having a baby. But I don't know. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, did the GM hit the panic button a little too early there? Maybe. But maybe it's just to get Matt Yao ready for the next season.
Definitely. I think it's a little bit looking ahead, and this team needed a shakeup. The way the goaltending situation has been the last 2-3 weeks or so, when you got a player of Jake Allen's caliber not traveling for a road trip, you have some trouble between the pipes. And it was great to see Allen bounce back in a big way last night. He stopped 26 of 27 shots against the Maple Leafs as the Blues won 5-1. So that's a huge morale boost. That's a lot of confidence for Allen moving forward after his tough 2-3 weeks there for the Blues, who are trying to tread water right now. As you mentioned, they're 2 points out of a wild card spot, which is very manageable with about 30 games left. Despite all the craziness that January has brought this team, they still find themselves in not even a distant chance. They're right in the thick of things to hold a wild card spot up.
And then with that, our next headline, again, before we get into the injury front, I think we're becoming professionals already. Talking about last week, how we were talking about people that could be on the move, older gentlemen in the National Hockey League that should be cup worthy, who haven't won one yet. Jerome McGinley now came out and made a statement saying that he would like to go somewhere and wants an opportunity to compete for a cup, and I quote. So, like we said, we talked about this last time. Do I see this happening? Definitely, especially with Colorado being on that almost rebuild kind of cellar type of status. I would like to see again go somewhere and have him get a cup. I loved him ever since I was playing NHL 2K5. So I've loved him ever since. He's a good, hard-working player, especially at the old age, getting close up to his 40s. So, like I said, I think we're getting pretty good at what we do now, stating that we think that Iginla's going to go somewhere, and then him a week after saying that he wants to be traded. He does have a no-trade clause, but he's willing to waive that no-trade clause to go to a cup-contending team. What do you think about that?
I think it's perfect. You see this in all Big Four sports. Some guys get stuck on some less caliber teams or teams that are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of expectations. Iginla has been in Colorado for a handful of years now as that veteran presence to help the growth and maturity of Landeskog, Duchesne, and McKinnon and company. Yeah. And, with Varlamov going down, with McKinnon being the lone representative on the All-Star team, and frankly, sort of the offense.
Yeah. Duchesne a little bit, Landeskog a little bit here and there, but
with those three and the talent they possess when they step on that ice, to say that this was a complete flop out there in Denver, Colorado, would be a complete understatement. So if you can get Iginla out there, fresh start, put some youth in this organization moving forward, then that would be a great move financially, future-wise for the Avalanche as they try and right this ship and get back to the winning ways. Mm-hmm. We mentioned a couple teams about a week and a half ago that we said would be great fits. Do you remember where you said? My headliner was Edmonton as a third or fourth line sort of power presence.
I agreed a little bit with that Edmonton, but I would have liked to see him go to either Minnesota or Columbus, because the streaks that they went on, I kind of hopped on the bandwagon a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I like the way they're playing hockey. They were playing good hockey on those streaks, and Columbus is a team that you can't really hate. I mean, they have so many underdogs.
You can hate Tortorella.
You could hate Tortorella, but
hate Tortorella. He's easily hateable sometimes.
Or Minnesota. Mm-hmm. They have that very big veteran presence on that team. I mean, it's not really a bunch of guys you can hate. They play the game hard. Both of them definitely cup contenders right now. They're both sitting atop their respective divisions. And I think that he would be probably a better fit in Columbus, giving that team more of a veteran presence when Minnesota kind of already has that with, Eric Stahl, Parisi, Pominville, and company. So my top pick is I would love to see him in Columbus, but the possibility of that, I don't know. We'll wait and see.
I'm going to kill your ears real quick. We're not going to get the injury front quite yet. I found another headline about
Oh, here we go.
What?
I already see it. It's Philly.
Yeah, it's the Flyers.
What is it? Here we go.
It's sort of a unfortunate but necessary sort of move that Dave Hackstall has decided to enforce coming up this weekend. He is going to sit Shane Gostisbehere and Travis Konechny for the second straight game.
Oh, wow.
The youngsters getting some time away from the ice to see if they can get back to a little bit better style of play that the Flyers were hoping for out of their young stars. Because it's been a trying season for Gostisbehere. We've touched on him a lot.
Yep.
Oh,
He's been having his sophomore
the
struggles.
slump is real. Yep. He needs time away from the ice to sort of sit back and maybe watch 60 minutes and not worry about playing it. Konechny's had a pretty serviceable first year, but he's seen his ice time dwindle to about 7-8 minutes on average. I understand that's average for the fourth line, but at the beginning of the year, he was flirting between second or third line.
Yeah, he started off pretty hot.
He had a pretty nice start, but since then he's had his minutes on the ice really cut down. And for the second straight game, neither of them were suited up for the Montreal win last night. And now they're going to welcome in the Kings on Saturday to the Wells Fargo Center without Gostisbehere and Konechny. Instead, Hackstall is going to throw out defenseman Nick Schultz and winger Dale Weiss, who was signed from Chicago this offseason. Hackstall was quoted as saying, "I can simplify it probably a little bit more. It's about winning hockey games. We're in the middle of a playoff battle here. We hope it's going to be a long battle because we think it's going to go right down to the wire. It's just about a roster and a lineup that gives us the best opportunity to win." So that may hurt the youngsters initially hearing that, but I think after they sit back and really realize that, their struggles have been affecting the team's play recently. Gostisbehere hasn't been quite as electric this season because, as we all know, in Big Four sports, your first season is going to be filled with normally a lot of positives more than negatives because the league is learning you on the fly. So you can come in like a bat out of hell, like Gostisbehere did on defense and scoring all those overtime goals, but year two, team's got a book on you.
Yep.
And you're going to have to conform to the league just like they conform to you. And so far, Gostisbehere's had his growing pains, and like we said, Konechny's ice time has dwindled. So it's all about it's just a blip on the radar in their careers. They're going to have great careers. It's just one of those things that, like we said, growing pains. They're going to have to get past this. But for the better of the team right now, who is in a wild card hunt and currently holding his position, they need to have the best 18 skaters they can.
So, trade block.
So trade block?
Now on to the injury front before we take our first quick break. We'll start off with the bad news first. Connor Sheary of the Pittsburgh Penguins will be out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. He's been having a breakout year so far.
Oh, yeah.
Especially recently, he's been playing on the top line with who other than Sid the Kid. He has 42 games played this year, 17 Genos, 18 Apples, combining for 35 points. So, Pittsburgh has been really dealing with injuries this year, whether it's Kunitz, Letang, Crosby, and now Sheary. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones.
Murray broke his hand in the World Cup.
Yep, and Murray, as he just mentioned. But they're still an elite playoff team.
A what?
Elite times 3. They are a very good hockey team that I could see winning the cup again this year. And especially if that man's in the lineup and still playing the hockey that he's playing, then that gives them a huge edge, especially with Crosby. It's a guy that he can mold to be a better hockey player than what he is, and I think the reason why the Sheary's having such good of a year as he is because he's been playing with Crosby the last couple of weeks. Now for the good news. Was your pick earlier at the beginning of the year for leading points, I believe, or was it goals?
Galchenyuk. I had him for points.
Alex Galchenyuk returned to the Montreal lineup last night, but like you said, they lost to Philly, right? Yeah.
They've lost their last 9 of 11 games in Wells Fargo Center. What's up?
Can't get away from Philly or Buffalo. But good to have Galchenyuk back in the lineup. Almost a point per game, 30 games played, 27 points, so definitely huge advantage to have him back in the Montreal lineup. And this was probably the most shocking news that we've received probably in the last couple of months we've been doing puck chat. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we informed you that the Florida Panthers put out a statement saying that Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau are most likely going to be done for the year, and talking about that huge impact that was going to have on them for the rest of the season, especially being in the playoff hunt right now, only a couple points out of the wild card. They're actually returning, both of them are returning to the lineup tonight.
I thought you were joking when you told me that.
I got the update, and I use a really big word here. I was flabbergasted. Lost for words. Don't know what that means. Lost for words when I saw that, especially when they were talking about how they could potentially be done for the year. And that's huge to have them back in the lineup because, let me find it, how many points there are in the playoffs. They are only 4 points out of the playoffs, 4 points behind Philly. Yeah, there it is. 4 points behind Philly in the Eastern wildcard race. Definitely huge to have them back, especially with the emergence of Vinny Trocheck. I mean, Aaron Ekblad's having a little bit of a down year, but he also contributes to that offense. So
Not this year.
Not as much this year. Not as much this year, but
it comes down.
You never know. Having Huberdeau and Barkov back might be able to make
well, absolutely, because then it's not a two-man show on offense. They only have 2 double-digit scores this year. Trocheck has 18 goals, and Johnny Marchessault has 15. He's a breakout player as well for the Panthers, who are still looking to find that formula that got him 103 points last year. The fallout has been tough for this team. As we mentioned, 2 double-digit scores. Their leader has .67 points per game. If you do that math, like I just did real fast, 51 games, 34 points. If that's your leader, you got a little trouble on offense. Like we said, Aaron Ekblad, 15 points in 51 games. He's been on the ice for all 51 games, but it hasn't been great.
So this brings up interesting discussion now as well. Now that you have 2 very good hockey players back in the lineup that could potentially push them back to the playoffs, would you still try and trade Jágr to a cup contender?
You got to make it. How much time we got till the deadline?
It's March 2nd, March 1st, March 2nd.
So it's a month?
Early March, yeah, about a month.
Holy woof. You said what, they're 4 points out?
4 points out.
And you're only behind Philly and Toronto, from what I was looking at?
Philly and New York, but I don't think anybody's really going to catch New York on the page.
No, New York has more or less locked up the first spot unless Philly goes on a run and New York falls out, because there's 7 points between.
4 points out of the division.
There's who is?
Florida.
Florida's 4 points out of the division?
Yeah.
There we go.
That's all you have here, Paul. Paul Barker, breaking stats news.
So I think.
And 4 out of the wild card as well.
I mean, it's got check time come February 20th, 24th, 25th.
I definitely, obviously, you wait it out, see where they are at the deadline. At the breaking headlines. Up next, we can.
I got more on.
Oh, you got more.
Yeah, I want to touch on their 2014-15 campaigns briefly in their output, and what we could maybe expect. I'll pose the question to you: what do you expect out of Huberdeau and Barkov? You can't expect the world to be on their shoulders, but you got to let them get their skating legs back under them. So, how much time do you give these players before you really harp on them and say, "Look, we need your A game"? Like the first, how many games do you give them to really get back acclimated to the speed of NHL? Because these guys were just 2 points under combining for 120 points last year. 59 each. Barkov, I believe, had 28 goals, so he was just under 30 goals. I mean, they were very formidable offensive threats for a Panthers team that ran into a buzzsaw of the Islanders last year. They really could have made a statement, but were shut down in the first round. I mean, this is going to be Huberdeau's first ice time of the season after a preseason ankle injury, and Barkov's been out the last 15 games with some undisclosed thing from Toronto in December. So I think you give a little more leeway to Huberdeau, who hasn't seen the speed of an NHL game since September, October. But I think you put pedal to the metal on Barkov at least, maybe after 2-3 games, because time is of the essence right now for this team.
Yeah, they got to get it going, especially like we said, whether or not they're going to be buyers or sellers at the deadline. But like we said, that's still a whole month in the process. I don't know if Huberdeau will be able to get right back into action right away. Like you said, this is going to be his first ice time he's seen.
He's probably going to work his minutes up.
I can't imagine they're going to throw him out there for 18 minutes their first game, but it'll be a work in progress. I definitely think that he has the tools and the skill set to be able to go out there and keep doing what he did in years past. But having not seen any ice time at all so far this year, I think it'll take him a couple games. But I have no doubt in my mind that he'll still be the same player that he was in the past.
You heard it here.
Is that all you have on Florida now?
Yes.
All right. Now I can start my weekly. You can call it Stephen A. Smith rant.
Oh boy.
When we come back from the break, we can never get away from this man, Jonathan Toews. Last weekend, as you know, was in the All-Star game, but was named to the NHL Top 100 Players of All Time. And we're going to talk about the one snub that should have been in, that, we can compare him to Jonathan Toews as well. So
it's not Paul Barker.
It's not Paul Barker. Paul's already talking about the Sabres right now. He's laughing. He's having a good time. But Johnny Toews, Top 100. We'll talk about that when we get back from the break. Welcome back to Puck Chat on WMCB The Fuse. If you haven't, followed us on Twitter at CrowdChantSport or FuseWMCB.
Fuse with a Z.
Fuse with a Z. Via Kyle Powell.
Thanks.
That time of the day. Wish we had like a soundboard we play like an air horn. But Johnny Toews is back in our topic of discussion now. Again, for like the third straight week.
Of course he is.
Heck yeah, here we go. All right, so if you haven't heard, over the All-Star break, the NHL celebrating its 100th year in the making. They put out a top 100 players of all time, and there were 6 current players that made it. And the list is Crosby, Sidney Crosby out of Pittsburgh, Alexander Ovechkin, Jaromir Jagr,
Duncan
Keith,
Patrick
Kane, and then Johnny Toews, making the top 100 of all time, joining a list of greats such as Gretzky, etc. But there's one man on here that one man current day that I was really thinking about on how didn't he make this list. Now, I don't know if it's because he's shadowed by another teammate that made the list.
Overshadowed
by a teammate that made this list, or if he's really just not getting credit where credit's due. Now, that man is Evgeny Malkin of Pittsburgh, and we'll do a little stat comparison, just like how we did for the All-Star game, on how there were a bunch of people that should have made it over Jonathan Toews. So here we go. We're going to get right to it. Johnny Toews, in his career in the National Hockey League, 688 games played. He has 260 goals, 332 assists, combining for 592 points. And the thing that is the only thing on this list that is greater than Malkin is he has a plus 186, which that is very, very incredible. But I also mentioned he's been on the Dynasty in Chicago. But his achievements since being in the NHL, he's won 3 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks. He's a 5-time NHL All-Star. In 2010, he won the Conn Smythe, which is the playoff MVP. Evgeny Malkin, 691 games played, 317 goals, 497 assists for 814 points. You're laughing.
Yeah, that's all it is at this point. It's just laughable.
It is. I don't know what Jonathan Toews has done in this world to make lists that he shouldn't. Don't get me wrong, he's an outstanding hockey player, but he is no better than Evgeny Malkin, who in my opinion should have made the NHL Top 100 over Jonathan Toews. Oh, but we're not done yet. Evgeny Malkin only has, I say only, 2 Stanley Cups compared to the 3 that Jonathan Toews has. He has 2 Art Ross trophies, which is the league leader in points. He was the 2007 Calder winner, which is the Rookie of the Year. He was the 2009 Conn Smythe, which we already said is the playoff MVP. He won that in 2009 with the Penguins. 2012, he won the Hart Memorial, which is the league MVP. In 2012, he won the Ted Lindsay Award, which is the most outstanding player. And he is a, 3-time All-Star. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
We have Paul around. Stat man. But you said it. It's almost laughable. because earlier in the year they were putting up a stat comparing Connor McDavid to some of the greats already in today's day of the current point per game leaders. And the top two are Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby. I'm sorry, it's Crosby and Malkin respectively, I believe. But Malkin is only like 0.2 behind Crosby. So, like I said, could this be because he's being overshadowed by Crosby? I don't know, because Taves technically is overshadowed by Kane in my opinion, but he still made this list. So could this be another factor of Chicago having that dynasty and being able to put players where they shouldn't be? For example, the All-Star game, even the top 100. And this is also another thing that we were talking about. Did he make the All-Star game strictly because they were releasing the top 100 and having a ceremony at the same weekend, in the same location? But either way, Jonathan Toews, in my opinion, did not deserve to make either of these lists. Evgeny Malkin is a lot better hockey player. I mean, the numbers don't lie. The achievements don't lie compared to Toews. Malkin, 814 points in 691 games compared to 688 games and 592 points.
It's like club numbers.
It is. It's video game numbers. And it just drives me insane that this man is just getting everything handed to him. And Malkin, I can't even stress enough how much of a better hockey player than Malkin is. I mean, yeah, he's with one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world, Sidney Crosby. But Toews has Kane, he has Hossa as well, so maybe that has contributed to his success. But it all comes down to I think the league is biased towards the dynasty of Chicago because they've been dominating the NHL the last couple of years. But Pittsburgh's no different. Pittsburgh is basically that Eastern Conference dynasty, if you want to call it. Thoughts?
The proof's in the pudding.
The proof's in the pudding. I like that.
Thank
Chocolate
you.
or vanilla?
I don't know what's your favorite pudding, Paul.
I don't really like pudding.
Paul doesn't like
what
pudding.
Are we talking about?
Breaking news, Paul Barker does not really like pudding.
No, it's right in front of our face. Taves is nearly 230 points behind Malkin for his career. It spans about the same amount of time. And just about the same amount of games as well. He's 60 goals behind. Oh my gosh, this isn't even funny.
It's not.
It's not.
If I wanted to make a fool of myself, I would go legit Stephen A. Smith mode right now. But
The only thing you can give credit to Taves for right now, which is chump change at the moment, but the plus minus has to be more or less to the credit of the better defense that I think Chicago's had. Pittsburgh hasn't had that solid, top five in the league defense. They've always relied on offense and Fleury's goaltending during their tenure as Kings, who were always battling for the Eastern spot in the Stanley Cup. Normally we've got a lot of guys from the Metro. It's going to be a dogfight this year, and Malkin's going to get a lot of the workload along with Crosby and the likes of Phil Kessel and the rest of that team as they head towards the Metro. What?
Nothing.
You say Phil the Thrill?
I said Fatty Phil.
Fatty Phil?
wow.
Why don't you like Fatty Phil? Nothing?
Toronto.
You just don't like Toronto?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Surprise.
Paul Barker again.
Does not like Toronto. No, but seriously, the list goes. It just goes on and on for Malkin. It's going to continue.
Oh yeah.
Because he shows no signs of stopping. Yeah, it's easy to say that there might be a little bias. 3 cups in 5-6 years' time, you're going to get a lot of people's attention. It's as simple as that. And Taves isn't a bad player by any stretch of the word. We're not trying.
that's
we're
not
not
what-
trying
yeah.
to degrade him in that manner. We're just saying he's a great player, but he's not elite.
He's not.
He's not as elite
I would.
as
I
other
would.
guys that
I would
are
even
sitting
call
at
him.
home.
I would call him elite, but he's not. Evgeny
Franchise.
Malkin. Yeah, he's not. Now we're talking like NHL 17 GM, like potential talk, but I would call him elite and even a franchise player. It's just he's not. I think one of the all-time greats of our generation right now.
Well, here it comes. All right, got check. Taves and Kane or Crosby Malkin? Who are you starting a team with?
Oh God, Crosby and Malkin.
Unanimously. So then how are Kane and Taves represented, but only one part of Crosby Malkin?
I don't know.
That's just that.
I really
If you
don't
want to
know.
look strictly at the teams and the players that have given these teams the most success, then cut it right down to that. And without even thinking, we all said Crosby and Malkin.
And I thought they did a really good job with this list, too. I definitely think that Crosby deserved to be on that list. Heck, I even think Duncan Keith deserves to be on that list. He's definitely he's the best defenseman in the NHL right now, probably of our generation. Active player. Yager definitely deserves. He honestly shouldn't. If he wasn't even an active player, he would probably still be on that list. Kane, I think last year,
Boosted.
definitely boosted his, I guess, stock for this top 100 list. Who else? I keep forgetting.
The rest of the actives?
Yeah.
Crosby, Ovechkin.
Ovechkin, there's no question Ovechkin. He's definitely one of the best goal scorers of all time. If anybody wants to yell at me for that, you can yell at me, but I definitely think he's one of the best goal scorers of all time. What's that, Paul?
So look at the stats.
Yeah, Paul says look at the stats. Oh, he's a stat man.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. But Taves is, another one that just blew my mind. Didn't really deserve to be on that list. Don't think he deserved to be in the All-Star game. Very happy, though, to see that Cam Atkinson was a alternate after, shockingly, Malkin went down didn't play due to an injury, but Lord knows, as we hate to say it, probably wasn't a serious injury. He just didn't want to play in it.
And you can't fault him for that.
Yeah.
What's the last thing Pittsburgh needs right now? Is it all-star injury to
Exactly.
Anthony Malkin?
As much as everybody hates to see it, I think that it's a good move on Pittsburgh's part to not have him play because, like we said earlier in the show, they are dealing with a mass amount of injuries right now, as they have all year. It's just exhausting talking about this week in and week out. Getting sick of Johnny Taves. He's made 2 NHL covers, too.
Yes, he had. Well, one was sort of unfortunate circumstance, but
Well, still, 2 NHL covers? No. Dynasty! Dynasty.
yeah. Let's take a break before you rip someone's head off, and we'll give the next 10, 15, 20 minutes. Paul, you can have my chair. You guys can talk Sabres future.
Yeah,
Get that
There's a-
Philly fan
There's
out
a
of
couple
here.
of UFAs coming up that are either going to be traded during the deadline or in the offseason coming out of Tampa and St. Louis, and Paul and Connor are going to spend the rest of the show weighing in on whether or not the Sabres should be sellers right now, buyers in the future, talk about the next few years contract-wise, financially, what's smart, what's not, and we're going to get the inside scoop on the boys who follow this team, this conundrum of a team out of Buffalo so devotedly. What are we putting? Oh my gosh. All right, we'll be right back. We will be right back.
All right.
Great song to do it, boys.
We're back on Puck Chat on WMCB, the Fuse with a Z. Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
We're back here alongside. We got a special guest tonight, Paul Barker. Straight out of Niagara Falls, New York. He attends Medallion College along with us on the baseball team as well. How you doing tonight, Paul?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing well. All right, so Sabres lost last night in overtime against the Rangers 2-1. Chris Kreider put in a nifty one-timer off some good passing in the Sabres' end. What do you think about that, Paul? What did you think about that play? Defensive breakdown or just a good play by New York?
I think it was a good play by New York. I think Verdun had to take that penalty there at the end because I forget who it was, went right around Ryan O'Reilly, and we had no shot.
I remember you freaking out about O'Reilly.
Yeah,
And getting
everybody
burned.
said he played a pretty bad game last night. I didn't get to catch the game because of practice, but we caught the end of it and saw us lose, so that wasn't too happy. But, yeah.
All right, well, we're going to go rapid fire here with Paul Barker here. Got a couple of questions for him. So we're going to start it off with, at the All-Star game, it was looking a little bit better, or even that game before Dallas, about everybody talking about playoffs, whether they had to string together a couple of good winning streak or not, getting some points on the road or even at home, whether it's overtime. But do you think that they still have a legit shot at playoffs, or do you think that, it's going to need a little bit longer to get, that legit shot at the playoffs? So basically the question is, do you see them in the playoffs this year?
Coming into the year, I thought they could have been a playoff team. Last year, they went above and beyond with my expectations. But with about 30 games left, they got to get around 45 points or higher, and I just don't see that happening with them. I mean, they played good going into the All-Star break, but coming out, losing to Montreal a couple nights ago, losing to the Rangers, I just don't see it happening this year.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. I mean, I don't think they're quite ready for the playoffs yet, unless they ended up being buyers, real big time buyers at the deadline, which I don't see happening quite yet. I don't think that they have all the tools to be there. I think on some nights they have the offense, some nights they have the defense, and then some other nights they have the goaltending. But I still don't think that they haven't really figured out how to get all those three really going on one night. So I definitely kind of agree with that. And talking about the deadline, do you think that they will be buyers or sellers at the deadline?
I think, honestly, they should be sellers. I think we should try and get rid of players like Molson, maybe Ennis, maybe a goalie like Leonard. Because I think Nielsen has been doing better than Leonard has. Even though our goaltending hasn't been too strong, I guess you can say. It might not just be the goaltending. I think the defense has let us down in a few games, just like that Montreal game the other night.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if one goalie had to be put up in trade block talk, it'd be Leonard, because I just see Nielsen being the better goalie this year. What do you think of the goalie situation?
I would say that you're 75% right. I mean, I think when Nielsen started to get hot and started, almost kind of take over that almost starter role from Leonard, he started to flop a little bit. I think he was playing a lot better as like that somewhat backup goalie number 2 role, as you could say, than he was as when he was getting all the pressure, starting a couple of games back to back. But I think for the future, I think, they're all free agents after this year, if you didn't know. But I would much rather keep Nielsen around when it comes to the offseason rather than Leonard. I think his play has been better than Leonard, even though the numbers are almost the same. But I definitely like the way that Nielsen plays in net, better than Leonard. But, this year, the numbers don't lie. The numbers are there. They have the same numbers, so, you really can't say too much different about them. But so I do agree with the statement on Nielsen. But when it comes to the deadline as well, what do you think their biggest need is going to have to be, whether they are buyers or sellers? You think they're going to be sellers.
Yes.
What do you think their biggest need is going to have to be?
Their biggest need, I think, would have to be defense. Because our defense, we have a good maybe top 3-4 guys on some nights. But I think we got to get rid of people like Franzen, Georges, people that don't look too strong on defense. Maybe Bogosian. But I like keeping Ristolainen, McCabe, and I like Kulikov. I don't know how other people feel about Kulikov, seeing as he's going to be a free agent. I don't know where or what he's going to do next year. But I like to see him stay in Buffalo and see what he can do another year.
I am one of those people that do not like Kulikov. I thought it was a great signing in the offseason, having a good track record over in Florida. But he's another one of those guys where he'll play shutdown defense one game, but he'll be just like a bunch of the defensemen, where they'll just be so sloppy in the defensive zone, causing turnovers, and that can't happen, especially if you're still somewhat sniffing playoffs. Having turnovers in your own zone, basically letting teams here take the puck and go score on me. That's not going to help at all. Giving teams opportunity, especially as a defenseman, that's your only job, is basically to keep the puck out of the net and keep it out of your zone. And when you can't do that, I don't see any value in a defenseman like that. I would not mind seeing Kulikov walk. I would not mind Kulikov being traded at the deadline, if possible. They're paying him almost $4 million. And when it comes back to you talking about Molson, I wouldn't mind getting rid of Molson, but I don't see that happening at all because they're paying him $5 million, and I don't think any team, we talked about this last week, I don't see any team taking in Molson's contract. They're paying him over $5 million a year.
I do. You can get a team to buy into that.
Kyle's yelling in the back because we got in an argument about this last week and how
you'd be surprised
teams could buy into just a guy having a good power play presence. Molson, last time we checked, he had 9 goals and some of them were on the power play that could have went up. You have to do my research.
Why do you think the Indians went out and got Brandon Guyer? Because he's a great pinch hitter. He had .430 for the Indians and led them to the World Series off a bench. There's guys.
That's such a different situation.
It is and it isn't, though.
It is, but it isn't.
But off the hump. The Indians needed help.
So you're telling me you're going to keep Matt Molson on the bench, paying him $5 million, but
I'm not
on the
saying
power
bench.
play?
No. You're not understanding the point. The Indians needed to address the bench. They got a guy for cheap out of Brandon, or they sold pretty high for Brandon Guyer, and he hit .430 for them, led him to the World Series. A team that needs power play help could potentially be coaxed into giving more back to you than you think you may ever have been able to get for Matt Molson because they need a power play presence. I'll look into some contenders while you guys are talking and see if somebody needs a power play help, and I'll try and make a match. You'd be surprised. All I'm saying is you'd be surprised. Teams get desperate. They know they need something to get over that hump. If Molson's that hump with 8 or 9 power play goals, then they may take a chance.
I would dump Molson only also if I would much rather have draft picks in return for Molson rather than a player. I mean,
Be that high.
Murray came out and said yesterday that they're still towards the edge of their rebuild, potentially maybe a playoff team next year and being those buyers all year and at the deadline next year. But it's just going to come down to whether or not the Sabres can pull a trigger on a move. Teams are going to want to buy in on Molson, but I just don't see that happening. They're paying him way too much, especially for the next 3 years. I don't see a team wanting to pay Molson $5 million for the next 3 years just because he's a power play hero. But next question, Paul. After that heated debate, so building off of their biggest need, who should they bring in? You already said maybe defenseman. Who else would you like to see maybe come into KeyBank Center?
Defenseman-wise, maybe Kevin Shattenkirk. He's going to want big money, though, so I don't know if the Sabres will be able to give him that. Maybe a goalie like Ben Bishop, like Connor said last week, I think it was.
Yep.
You like Ben Bishop. But I don't really know who else the Sabres can bring in that they'll be able to pay that'll be a solid defenseman for them. I mean, you can keep a guy like Kulikov. I know Connor doesn't want to, but I like him. And I think we could keep him and build him into a strong and better defenseman to see where he is consistent. And then maybe add one more defenseman, 2 more, and get some of the young guys called up and see what they can do in the NHL as well.
All right, we're going to do a rapid fire right now. Fedun or Bogosian?
I like Fedun because of the offensive standpoint. I think he's a better offensive defenseman than Bogosian. The other night, I don't know if you saw this, but Bogosian was a -5 against Montreal.
I did see that. Yeah, that was amazing.
For all 5
Good.
goals.
All right, let me see. Falk or Franzen?
I'm going to have to go with Falk because I just do not like Franzen at all. I don't know how you feel about Franzen, but I just don't like him.
Hey, he's hot right now. He's got 2 goals in his last 5 games, which is incredible for Buffalo defensemen because I'm pretty sure a couple of weeks ago they only had 4 total goals among their defensemen. But just did that to kind of almost prove a point where I agree with that. I would much rather keep Falk and Fedun, however you pronounce it. I always call them Fedun. I would much rather keep them and spend less money on, average, decent defensemen who will go out there, work their tails off and do the best they can. And who knows, maybe make an even bigger impact than having, Franz and Bogosian being paid $4 or $5 million, either when if it's just a 1-year deal or a multi-year contract. I would much rather have that small money for average, maybe a little bit above average defensemen, rather than paying average defensemen $5 million a year. I mean, that's also what's going to be a big factor in whether or not they're going to be buyers in free agency at the trade deadline, because they're paying so many guys, crazy money. I already said Bogosian, Franzen, they're paying Kulikov around 3-4, paying Molson 5. Johnson's a free agent at the end of the year, but they're paying him 5. Ennis is getting 4. Kane is getting 5.
They're still paying Cody Hodgson about 3.
Yeah, they are still paying Cody Hodgson 3 because they bought out his contract. Next question. Dan Bilesma. I know I've heard you go off on rants about him every now and then. So what do you feel about him?
I think Dan Bilesma is a good coach. to keep in Buffalo because he's good with like the young players that we have on the team. One thing I did not like, though, I'm going to flash back to the game against the Stars a week or two ago when they, at the end of the game where they called no goal and the ref went over to talk to Dan Bylsma and they had about a 30-second conversation and he didn't seem mad at all. I feel like he should show that he wants it more and kind of like say more stuff to the ref and like have a deeper conversation with him, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the only time that he's really ever fired up and, trying to inspire a team is whenever he calls that, late game timeout where he's lighting a fire under everybody's behinds, yelling at him, trying to inspire them. But, except for that, I think you hit the nail on the head there, too. When it comes to when he has really bad calls or, just poor officiating or just trying to help out the team, sometimes it doesn't seem like he's really there to help defend them. But I do like Bylsma as a coach for now. I think if something opens up later on next year, the following, maybe try and go and pursue another head coach if this isn't working out. My biggest pet peeve with Bylsma is that he juggles the lines way too much. It's going to be tough to be successful when you're playing with different guys night in and night out. I do not like that about him. I think that they need to consistently, my one biggest pet peeve is they need to consistently keep Reinhart, Eichel, and Foligno on the same line.
They've been on the same line for a while now. I'll give them credit. They've had the same lines for a couple weeks now.
And I think that needs to continue. And it also seems like ever since Ennis came back, you're right, that ever since Ennis came back, that the lines have actually been pretty consistent. I like how they're keeping Okposo and O'Reilly together. I like that a lot. And also, I think the reason why Molson's not doing as well as he was earlier in the year is because he's not playing on the fourth line with Delorier and
Cal O'Reilly.
Yeah, he was playing with Cal O'Reilly before they waived him.
They waived him?
They did waive him.
I did not see that. When was that?
I think 2 days ago they waived him, yeah. And then that was another talk during Tim Murray's interview with WGR 550. He said that they could be shopping for a fourth-line center, which I don't know. I think that they could just easily bring up somebody from the AHL. I don't know why they didn't do that. But
bring up someone from the
did
AHL.
You see when they waived Derek Grant and Nashville picked him up on waivers his first game? He got destroyed by
who was it? McQuaid from
Adam.
Boston.
Yeah, Adam McQuaid. Yeah, he got destroyed by Adam McQuaid.
I definitely saw that.
Unreal. So he said they should be sellers. You like Bylsma. They do not have a shot at the playoffs. You'd like a probably top 4 defenseman to come in, and you want to get rid of Molson, Franzen, and company. I agree with most of it. I think that if this losing continues, they lost, I think, their last 3 now, I believe.
Last 3.
They lost their last 3 after winning 4 straight in overtime, 3 straight in overtime, I think.
3 straight in overtime.
So, very big morale change in the last couple of weeks in the city of Buffalo. People thinking, hey, this team could potentially go to the playoffs after winning 3 overtime games in a row, thinking that we're all heroes. And then
they need to be more consistent.
Yeah, and then losing 3 straight. It's just they can't be consistent, as Paul just said. Or they need to be more consistent. They need to figure out all aspects of the game and actually have that work in the same night instead of just having the offense be good and the defense be terrible.
They have to limit shots on goal, too. They let up 30 to 40 shots every game.
I talked about that, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah, they're either first or second worst in the NHL for shots allowed per game at 33. And I think that also has to deal with the struggles of the goaltending, because when you're giving up 33 shots per game, that's going to be really tough. It's going to be a tough night on a goaltender.
Yeah, I think last game they gave up 44 against the Rangers. I'm pretty sure they gave up 44 shots on goal.
Yeah, and it was they not just shots on goal. They gave up like 68 shots attempted.
It's just brutal for the goaltenders to have to go through 30 to 40 shots a game, and they're getting peppered. And some games our offense isn't like all there, so they're putting up 3 goals and we can't even score 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to stay in the game when you're letting up so many shots and our goalies can't take that much pressure, you know?
Last little topic about the Buffalo Sabres. As you all know, the expansion draft is coming up this summer with the Las Vegas Golden Knights entering in their first season in the NHL. With the expansion draft, there are 2 options for teams to lock up players. Option 1 is teams can keep 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goaltender. Or option 2 is they can lock up 8 total skaters and 1 goaltender. So our last topic about the Sabres, we're going to talk about on who we think the Sabres should lock up. And we're going to start with Paul.
Okay, so I saw an article. I just looked at it again, but I looked at it about a week ago. That said they were going to not lock up Evander Kane. And I do not agree with this at all. I think they should lock up Ryan O'Reilly, Kyle Oposo, Marcus Foligno, Tyler Ennis, Johan Larsson, Zemgus Girgensons, Evander Kane, Zach Bogosian, Rasmus Ristolainen, Jake McCabe. And then for goalies, I think they can either do Nielsen or Leonard, because I don't think either goalie would go to that team anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to see Kane stay and have them save Kane, because next year he's going to be a free agent. So I would like to see them maybe trade him next year at the deadline, seeing as where we are in the playoffs, and actually get something for him instead of letting him go to Las Vegas and not getting anything for him in return. But yeah, those are my guys I think we should save. And what do you think on this topic?
I agree with most of those, and I especially like how you talked about Evander Kane and locking him up specifically, not really specifically, but due to you could probably get a lot for him next year at the deadline, or maybe even this offseason after they lock him up. I mean, he started to get hot a little bit before the break after he got off to a slow start. So I wouldn't even mind seeing Kane go this year if they're going to be sellers at the deadline. I would like to see them swing him for maybe even a younger prospect, or like I said, even draft picks. But I would like to see a player that can maybe make an impact as quick as possible for next year. I think this team is not far away from playoffs. I think goaltending and defense is their biggest issue. So if they can swing Evander Kane for maybe a young goalie or a young defenseman, that would be huge. But off the top of my head, I would definitely lock up O'Reilly, Okposo, Foligno, Ristolainen, McCabe. I would have to go Molson as well. So that's 6. Need 2 more. I can't even think.
You got Tyler Ennis, Girgensons, Larson.
I would lock up Ennis. I would like, just for the same reason as Kane. Maybe you can swing him for something. I mean, I wouldn't want a guy of, a decent hockey player that you could get something in return. I don't want somebody like that to walk. I mean, even Girgensons, I would probably lock up Girgensons as well, because depending on what their situation is next year, you could probably swing him for something. But when it comes to goaltending, I would... this is a tough one. I don't know. Because if you let Leonard or Nielsen walk, then you're basically out of a 1-2 goalie. But maybe Olmark could be ready. So maybe you lock up Olmark and maybe
was it
build for the
last
future.
year he came up for a while and played well?
Yeah, he did, and then I think he's. I don't even think he might have had 1 game up so far this year.
I don't think he played though. I think he got called up, but I don't think he played.
I remember him coming up a couple times just to sit on the bench and be a backup, but I really thought that he had at least just 1 game played this year. But
another good stat. We only have 1 shutout.
yeah, 1 shutty. Who did that go to?
Nielsen.
Nielsen, yeah.
It was like one of the first games of the season too.
Oh, good. And then they got off to a hot start. Anything, Kyle?
I've just been playing the game, like the looking ahead.
Oh, where Molson can go. Shoot.
No, I didn't do that. I did something else instead. I looked at the schedules and projected some win-losses and what you'd do if this was the Sabres.
All right, let's hear it, Philly fan.
All right, so there's a computer at the corner of this radio station that I decided to utilize. And I looked ahead to the schedules for the Sabres, the Panthers, and this is the Maple Leafs. Their schedules remaining until the deadline of March 1st. I think the easiest schedule actually went to Buffalo. They have some favorable matchups. Florida's got a tough road to hoe. And Toronto I kind of wrestled with, but they had the most amount of games. But anyway, we'll start with Buffalo. They have a couple games with Ottawa, home and away. I had them splitting that in half. You guys feel free to jump in if you'd like. I can change the points accordingly. I had them losing to San Jose. The Devils are beatable.
Is the San Jose that's home?
San Jose, no. This is
No, yeah, we worked that San Jose game next Tuesday.
I think it'll be a tough one. Yeah.
I have them losing to Anaheim, losing to Toronto in Toronto, beating Vancouver, crushing Colorado twice, beating St. Louis, losing to Chicago, and then beating the Coyotes and the Predators for an 8-5 record, which would put them to 66 points at the deadline. And I projected ahead. Again, this is just a quick
So how many
mashup.
points is that?
66 points.
No, like how many did they get? 16?
16 points on top of their 50 right now. So I looked ahead to Florida as well. They play 11 games. I had them losing both games against the Ducks, splitting the series up until the deadline with the Kings, losing to Nashville, losing to San Jose, beating St. Louis, losing to Edmonton. Calgary I wrestled with. Calgary's kind of a confusing team. I actually ended up giving the win to Florida, losing to Ottawa, and beating Carolina to put Florida at 4-7. Florida's a real toss-up right now. That schedule could have gone as a winning
Especially
record, a
with
losing
the guys
record.
coming back, too. So.
Yeah, so they determine their own fate, especially with Hudor and Barkov. This is a schedule that could flip-flop easily. They could have gone 7-4 if somebody else looked at this. But the way I looked at it, somewhere between 62 and 64 points at the deadline. So by my projections, Buffalo would be ahead of them. And then Toronto, who's already in a pretty good spot, who had 55 points at the day's start today. I had them beating Boston, splitting with the Islanders, who are suddenly really hot. They're not a given win
Yeah, they're
anymore.
in the hunt now. So
7-2-1 the
Yeah.
last 10.
Beating Dallas because of the goaltending, losing to St. Louis, who I think is going to kind of figure this thing out. Obviously, going on the projection I had with Toronto earlier up there, playing Buffalo at home, I had to give Toronto the win.
that's a big game.
Yeah. Losing to Columbus, beating Ottawa, Carolina, and Winnipeg, losing to the Rangers, losing to Montreal, and losing to San Jose. So at the end of my projection, I had their 13 games splitting at 7-6, and that would give Toronto a 30-23 record, 30-23-9, which would give them 69 points at the deadline. So if this plays out anywhere sort of like this, all these teams will be flirting between 60, 62, 64, and maybe close to 70 points. Would that change your aspect if the Sabres play well and one of these teams falters? Would you be sellers, buyers? Obviously, it's going to change for the entire city and the organization and management. But if this were to play out looking forward a little bit and actually kind of delving into the schedule ahead, I think Buffalo has a favorable one moving forward if they know what they've got at stake. Florida, like I said, they could fall by the wayside fairly easily. In Toronto, I'm looking at a 500 stretch for them before the All-Star break. But
For the trade break.
yeah, I'm sorry, the trade deadline. Any thoughts on that?
I think if they're doing
Would that change your mindset on the guys that you were talking about selling earlier? If anything like this comes anywhere close to fruition?
I think maybe we could sell Kane for maybe another young, average guy.
All right, we're going to go in a perfect world again.
Okay.
In a perfect world, Evander Kane or Tyler Ennis, somebody with a contract that you can swap out for Ben Bishop. In a perfect world, I think Tampa would take the younger offensive talent and give away Ben Bishop because he's not having the best year, but he is still a very good goaltender. He was a Vezina Trophy finalist last year. To go along with the lacking Steven Stamkos, he's still injured. To go along with Nikita Kucherov and company, I think that if you threw Evander Kane or Tyler Ennis, and if they wanted to be buyers and really make a push at the playoffs, if I was Tim Murray, I would be 110% willing to throw draft picks at them. They have two second rounders, I think 2 third rounders this year, but then they don't have a fourth. But I would definitely throw at them a couple of draft picks, whether it's this year or the next year or the future, with either Evander Kane or one of those forwards that.
Only if you consider yourself a contender.
Oh yeah, only if they're contenders, and only I would say at most 3 points, 3-4 points out of a playoff spot. Then I would consider the Sabres to be buyers, and that's when I would consider going out and trying to pull Ben Bishop or somebody huge. So it's like how I said. I mean, it's hockey. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, even with these games, I mean, anything can happen with Ottawa. They've played good games against Ottawa. They played good games against Toronto. They beat them in overtime before the break. Even that game with Nashville, they could lose that game against Nashville. They beat Nashville in overtime before the break. So it's just going to come down to how they're playing before the deadline. what they're
26 left.
where they're standing
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
in the standings of the
They played
deadline.
50.
So it's
So 50
for Tim Murray. It's going to be a hard job for him
63 games.
They have 19 games left.
If you do these, yeah,
after the deadline.
Yeah.
after the deadline.
So like I said, perfect world. Vander Kane, Ennis, draft picks, anybody. Tampa Bay for Ben Bishop.
Now be honest with me.
Right.
Do you think Tim Murray would really push to do something like that?
Because you know you got to sign him after you trade for him too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The guy Tim Murray is, we haven't seen much trading going on in the past, I don't know, a couple years or so.
He's been more involved than Regier, and that's what I like about him. He's more involved and he's more willing to try and go out and bring in big name guys. They were the front runners for Steven Stamkos. And you said you had the inside scoop on him. They were about 10 minutes away from getting Steven Stamkos until he decided to re-sign with Tampa Bay.
They made the trade for O'Reilly during the June draft.
That was a big trade. I
They did
really
do that.
liked O'Reilly coming to town, the way he's putting up some points for the Sabres. But I just don't see Tim Murray doing something like that, even if we are contending for a playoff spot. Because I think he would like to keep Kane and Ennis on the Sabres.
I also think it's a necessity also to keep those young prospects. I mean, we talked about it before with Asplund, Nylander, Gooley,
Cooley.
Justin Bailey. I mean, it's gonna be a tough job for Tim Murray come the trade deadline. Crazy day for Puck Chat here at Medat College. I think that's gonna wrap up our show, Paulie B.
All right.
Yeah. How'd you enjoy your first time on Puck Chat?
It was good. You know, the guys opened me in with open arms.
As we always do
fun
here
time.
at WMCB The Fuse, Beyond
Even
the Box
though we
Score.
don't really like Kyle Powell, the Philly fan.
Philly fan. That's right. They're welcome.
Even though they are sitting in a playoff spot, we still don't like them.
No
We gotta
way.
catch them. We gotta catch them.
Good luck.
We gotta have
After we get Ben Bishop, we'll catch you.
Good luck.
gotta have them go down and have us move up.
I hear you, Paulie.
It's good Alan.
All right, and with that is going to wrap up our show here on Beyond the Box Score, WMCB The Fuse. For past shows, you can check it out on crowdchantsports.wordpress.com. Follow us on Twitter for Beyond the Box Score at Fuse with a Z, WMCB, or for Crowdchant Sports at Crowdchant Sport.
And YouTube right now.
And YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel for the past couple of podcasts. You can go on there, just search Crowdchant Sports, Beyond the Box Score, and you should find us on there. So, Connor Priester, Paul Barker, and Kyle Powell wishing you a good weekend. And on Tuesday, we have Beyond the Box Score. Tuesday after the Super Bowl, we're going to recap and review the Super Bowl and everything else.
Super Bowl predictions. Let's hear
Yeah,
it.
just roll your way to the computer on Tuesday after the Super Bowl feast.
Super Bowl
I think,
predictions. What do we
Cole,
got here?
I think Cole predicted New England, and then me and Kyle predicted Atlanta. I think I said 34-31 Atlanta. So
I'm gonna have to go with New England.
Paul says New England. So
Belichick and Brady era lives on.
Wow.
50-50 split here at Beyond the Box Score. You heard it first here from Paul Barker. Paul Barker, our special guest tonight, our Buffalo Sabres insider here at Beyond the Box Score. We will see you on Tuesday afternoon. Have a good night.